Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet
Hello.
another version of February office hours. Hello, Inda. Um,
Hey, Harris. Hi, everyone.
how's it going?
Very good. How about you?
Doing good after all of these holidays. Glad to be back. We're back with yet another office hours today. With me as an expert on the topic is my colleague Inda Mohan. My name is Harris. Um, you may already know that. So today we're going to have another hour of office hours, another session of office hours. We're going to go through what we're going to have. We have some really fun questions to share with you, some updates, and the aftermath of our perform in Las Vegas. In a moment, I should have my slides up here so we can go through it quickly. So without further ado, let's see what's on today's schedule. So what you can expect in this session is pretty usual standard things that we've had in a couple of past iterations as well. First, we're going to have the Q&A session. Of course, we have a couple of preset questions that we've picked from our community. We're going to look at the questions and answer them, and we're going to discuss them. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions as well, feel free to write us wherever you're watching us from. We're happy to answer all of your questions and happy to chat with you if you have any kind of concerns or questions regarding the app development. And happy to see that there is already people joining us here. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the questions before we see now we see a lot of hands up there. We've had a question from Zoltan regarding the custom visual components that are used in dashboards and notebooks. So Zoltan had a concern where he couldn't fit the requirements for the data visualization into their dashboard categorical visual that we have, as they required some additional stacking or grouping. So they wanted to see if we're planning to make it able to deploy the corporate custom visual for dashboards, and then they could select it from the list of visuals, something like we have in dashboards or notebooks currently available. So you can select and see different visuals. And then they shared us with an example of a dashboard where they have more than 10 time series bar charts, and they want to add 2 custom non-time series based charts, but the only option is to rebuild the whole page as custom extension app page, which means they have to also rebuild all of the 10 ones. Now we can look at the answer to this, which does not require you to change anything here, as you will see quickly. So you will see this is Zoltan's question. Then after clarifying a little bit, basically, do we want to see how the data looks first, which is the answer to this question, right? The categorical chart has a straightforward way how to do stacked bars. However, the problem in this question was the way that the data was structured. And here at the screenshot that Michele actually shared it, the issue was in how this data was structured on their side. So you can see here 2 examples. You can take a look. You can see that the data structure was different. And then if we actually restructure it, we can have different visualizations based on how the data is structured. Then in the resuming post, you will find a link to this, to all of these questions that we're going to take a look in the chat. Then we had an additional question on that, how to actually use the similar categorical visualization. And you can use the fields flatten command, and you can check for more examples here from Michele. Inda, do you have any additional comments on that?
Yeah, just a couple of things. It's not a typical app development question. That's something I would like to highlight. The reason why we are presenting this is the question was asked that in a way that Well, I don't know if I can do that within the notebook and dashboard, and I create an app to do that. And that's why we actually brought Still It Up. For this particular use case, you actually don't need that, and you can just use DQL along with the dashboarding, along with the notebook or dashboard, and you can still be able to use it. The element that actually is um, important perhaps for you is, depending on what kind of chart component that you use to chart the data, you can go to developer portal and see what kind of structure that it expects. That could also potentially help you. This was a great realization for me when I was trying to understand this question. If you look at the reference docs for that particular component, you would see what kind of data it expects, and that also gives you more options to change your data structure in a way that you can do more type of visualizations with that. So I think that's the biggest learning here, beside of course that you can do that within the notebook and dashboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally cool. Now we have an intermittent question right here. Nasheed asked, can we use DQL query and use app function on a button click? Now I don't see why not. Based on what I know, you can have a button which handles a function, and then that function could be calling the use DQL query and store it in a constant, right?
Yeah, it's totally possible to use it. By default, for instance, if you use use to query and app function, the moment it is actually used is also in sequence of event. That's where actually it is called. But you can, I think there is a parameter to stop that behavior. And then you actually can do, for instance, with the use DQL query, there is a refetch uh,
Mm-hmm.
function that you get. And there's, I'm pretty sure something similar is available for use app function that you can use to again refetch stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I'm also thank you for that, because I think it also should work. Now Nasheed says that he tried that and the code is breaking. I think in this case, without knowing too much details, it would be best um, if Nasheed reaches out to us in the community, and also post. So you can post the exact same question like you did right here, but in the details, it would be good if you include um, um, the code snippets that you use, and then we can take a look, and um, we will let you know as soon as possible.
yeah,
So
and
it should be
hopefully,
possible. Sorry.
use that question in the next office hour. So please go ahead, Nasheed, and write your question there.
Yeah, definitely. So we will answer you before the next office hours, definitely, but we will probably feature it so you can see how it's done, especially if you have that kind of problem. All right. So we've seen how the different visualizations work and how the data affects those visualizations. We'll quickly go back to visit some other questions now. Now, we had a problem, or Orion had a problem here, where since a couple of weeks, the app header of their app is acting weird on Chrome. So they use the navigation item, and on Firefox, you can see that it's actually displaying it quite okay, but on Chrome, it's not displaying it properly. So if they click on the invisible button next to the menu, there is a page refresh and they come back to normal. They wanted to know if where it comes from and how to fix this issue. So we'll have a look. You can also follow this quicker if you want, if you just follow the link that Kerry shared with us. So you can see the question here that Ariane posted, and it was Inda. You asked for more details, and of course, I think this is a very good point to mention in general. If you're asking us questions on community, if you have, and most of these things are going to be code related, it always has some kind of code involved, and it is best if you share the code in the first question, and because this allows us to to quickly see the issue that you're having, because without the actual code, it's quite hard to guess what could be wrong. But with the code, you kind of understand the whole surrounding of it. Now, Ariane shared the code with us, and Inda, maybe because you answered, you can tell us what was the issue here.
I mean, sure. I didn't actually solve the problem. I just asked more question and question, and the the question asker actually answered their own question. The problem was that they were using Flex, uh, and within that, the app header was inside that Flex, and that was causing this issue. And that's why we already shared the docs. The app header component is already a responsive header. You don't have to use other responsive components around it uh, to make it responsive. If that's something you want to do, it's by default will be responsive, and you just basically use app header. If you have icon or link, just add those subcomponents into it, and that should be it. That's the right way of using it.
Yeah. So as we can see, Ariane realized the mistake after after you asked a couple of questions actually, and that was a very quick fix, which helped with the issue. So if you have the same kind, you can check the documentation on how you can use the navigation items. Now, moving on, we had a question from Tarjay or Tarhey, who asked if it's possible to actually bring your own design framework and use it in the custom app. They wanted to replace the Strato with a different third-party design library. Now, this is something that we discussed in the before. I was quite curious about this, and it's definitely possible. So the answer to this question is that you can simply install any kind of design library by using the npm, and then use it. However, there is another bigger question in the background, right? So why would you use different design framework other than Strato, which is specifically made for Dynatrace custom apps? Do you know any use cases in that you would have to use different design framework?
I mean, to be honest, personally, at this point, I don't see any reason to use any other full-fledged framework to use with Dynatrace apps. There are so many reasons to not use it actually at this point. You have the whole UI ecosystem, right? You have the sidebars, you have the other stuff going on around, and then you have within that your application. So if you start using different framework, the whole system would look like out of touch with each other. Your app, which is using different framework, then actually is collaborating sort of with the rest of the Dynatrace platform, which is done with the Strato. But there's another question that I perhaps also asked here, and that I usually ask. So if you have this kind of thought, I would ask, why do you really want it? Perhaps maybe there is some functionality missing in the Strato, and you want to actually get that functionality. If that's really the question, maybe just raise this question in the community, that we need this kind of functionality, and we actually get you provided that functionality if that makes sense for us as well. And maybe that's the best way forward. But of course, as said here, if for some reason you don't want to use Strato here, well, it's a front end application. You can just do npm install any other framework and start using it with. Uh, but again, Strato is more compatible with the rest of the tooling that we have. That's mostly designed to work with Dynatrace apps.
Yeah, I think you covered it great. I think you didn't skip anything that was important regarding this. So it is possible, and I think it's great to keep the doors open in case somebody really likes something. But it would also be great if you have such use case to share it with us, and then our teams can also pick it up and add it to the Strato components. And what you said, it just looks more natural because everything is built around Dynatrace, and Strato itself is built to fit in on the UI side with everything else that is built inside Dynatrace. But definitely possible. We're also curious if you have such use cases for different kind of style visualizations for the UI. If you have, please let us know regarding that. Okay, quite some switching today. Now, there was another question. Chris asked us if it's possible and how is it possible to implement the highlight for the hovered row in a data table. So they were not sure how to set the class name property on the row level. And we can take a look at that in a second here. So of course, this was a pretty straightforward. Here's Chris. Michele as well. He's one of the PMs, if I'm not wrong. So you can see that PMs are active on the community, so they can answer all of the questions as well. But that also means that they're actively reading what you are asking in the community, and they get the feedback, so they channel it back. So it's a pretty good sign. The answer to Chris's question in implementing the hovered row is the natively supported interactive rows. So you don't need CSS for that. It was not listed in the docs, so that was taken to be put into documentation. And as you can see here, you can just put the element interactive rows inside the data table, and then it becomes interactive. I think it's a pretty straightforward. I think Chris had some additional questions and answers, so you can check that out if you're interested. But if you want an interactive row which gets a title after you hover over it, you can check it out, and it's pretty simple to implement. Any comment on this from you, Inda?
You covered everything. Maybe perhaps what you said. This thread is pretty interesting because the discussion is going around that the question asker can't use data table v2 for some different reason, but eventually realized actually that it is possible. If I'm not wrong, you can use for most of your use cases where you use data table, the new version, which is data table v2, and that discussion is actually happening in this thread. So if you have the similar dilemma, similar questions, maybe check this thread out. You would find useful information there as well.
Yeah. Greatly said. Cool. We don't have any more new questions coming up. Again, just reminder, if you have anything on your mind, please let us know. We're happy to take it. Now, the next question that we had was using the time frame selector in the custom app. So here, a customer had a problem where they used, they have a custom app which displays the trend of problems in a bar chart and how are they trending over the period of time side by side. So it looks well when they created it. However, they were only able to see the last 2 hours of data by default. And they wanted to add the time frame selector to control the data display. So pretty common in most other Dynatrace applications. So you can select the time frame and then you fetch the data from that specific time frame. Then you can see that we have the link to the actual developer Dynatrace time frame selector. However, once they added it to the code, it didn't appear to apply. So they were new to React and they needed help. And then here, as you can see, they highlighted the code in bold, which are they're referring to Dynatrace developer documentation, which they used in the timeframe selector. So you can see here that they used the use state, they imported timeframe and timeframe selector. And then you can see here that they set the value and return the value and change. So we will take a look. I believe that this was your answer, Inda.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that you took this one. And this, I also want to highlight that it's a pretty good example of a really nice question. So the user here, Tanvir MD, he presented the question, added the code, and told us what he did, what he tried so far. Chris also here contributed. But then Inda, please let us know what was the answer here.
Thank you. It's simple again. By default, if you throw the time selector component and you have a use SQL query, uh, uh, they won't the query won't use the time selector values by default. You have to sort of tie them together. And one way of doing it actually is, for instance, use these two properties on the body of use SQL query: default time frame start and default time frame end, and use the values from the time frame selector here. And there you go. And that's how you basically connect them. And then basically once your user starts using the time frame selector, the query would fire with that value. That's basically it actually.
So basically, this value is nothing unless you link it right down there within the query, actually.
Yes, exactly. So by default, all it's doing is user is selecting a value from the selector, and that is stored in a local use state hook, but it's not being used anywhere, right? So this is how you use it in use SQL query to actually have an actual change in the query results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, while we're at it, we can also can we also put default values here, so we can have any kind of different time frame, right? Even if we don't want a dynamic setting of the time, we can have always like last 30 days or last year, if we needed to.
Well, you can for sure hard code stuff here. That's possible.
But the preferred way would be to actually have it like this, using the time frame selector.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, cool. I think that was there is of course there is some additional add-on conversation that you can check down below, if you find this relevant to your
It's
use.
always interesting what other people write, and you that makes it interesting. Actually, someone has a problem, they have the same problem. I would still go through all the uh, thoughts everyone basically has to find something useful out of that.
Yeah, it's really cool how also other customers share their solutions and their additional problems to the related, and this way I think it's a great way to see what else what other people make, but also how they solve their problems.
Mm-hmm.
And we love forum blog posts where we can see a lot of different things and read through different experiences. That's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. Um, Now, I think this is the last question of the day. And this one is pretty common. We see it quite often, usually when it comes to some kind of exam. Andrea here asked about the application developer certification exam. So she took already last year the exam. And then she asked for, if anyone attended the exams, she asked for experience, if anybody else could change what kind of complexity it is, and can you develop it in 2 hours? She asked for examples, and can you use the documentation for the whole exam, for both parts? Now, it's a very fun one, because the answer to this, as you will see, it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't reveal the data of the actual contents of the exam itself. However, Sinisha here clarified some things for her. So you can use the documentation from developer.dynatrace for the full length of the exam. And this was recently changed. So before, I assumed that you couldn't. And that, correct me if I'm wrong.
As Sini said, Sini was more involved here, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not wrong, and I would assume he's writing the truth here.
Yeah. So you couldn't use it before. Now we allow the users to actually be able to adjust this. But also regarding the complexity, Sinisha here says that if you can use the tutorial without using the solutions that are provided within the tutorial, you should be well prepared enough for the exam. Now, there is some more discussion that you can check. How is the exam? So Andrea also shared with her her experience of it, and Mustafa here, who actually shares a comment, posts a comment here, actually made a post about his experience regarding it. So I think this is a pretty good post that we wanted to feature today.
And
And
actually, that's the reason why we picked this question, because the question itself is from 2023. If you look at it, it's the reason why Mustafa is the reason why we are actually talking about this question.
now, exactly. So Mustafa actually posted this last month, and I hope, yeah, just a moment, I will get it. There we go. So Mustafa posted this last month in regarding to his app developer certification roadmap. So he shared a very extensive post, which I think is really great. There is many questions and many scattered information throughout different posts and questions. But Mustafa really summed it up here greatly, and I see that he's quite active in the community overall. And here you can check out what kind of information helped him and what kind of knowledge was important to him for passing the certification. So you can see that you need TypeScript and specific information and specific areas of TypeScript that you want to know before you try to take the exam. Then the knowledge of React, and that would also include JavaScript as well as TypeScript. And then he has the roadmap, which he created, which would be kind of the walkthrough of what you need to do. So basically the approach of Dynatrace app, the technologies, the toolkit, app shell, JavaScript runtime, the design framework, and how everything works. And I really like how he actually went with more advanced. So when you use app functions, intents, different services, and security. And he also is open for suggestions. So I think it's a really great example of a community post where Mustafa shared his findings and his experience regarding the certification. So we sure hope that this is useful for all of you. And of course, once again, thank you, Mustafa, for contributing here. Now, there is a tip of the day. It should be shared as well in the chat if you want to see and check the certification roadmap by Mustafa. Now we're going to go through with some news. Just a moment here for my screen to go. So you had some new releases. And the 19th developer newsletter was released last month. Inda wrote in it. Inda, what did you write in the last developer newsletter?
I mean, a lot of it is actually there, also news and stuff. And also, of course, different versions of Strato and all the SDKs. That was the highlight. But I think one thing that I really want to mention is the keyboard shortcuts. We mentioned it, I think, in one of the past office hours. Not a lot of people actually know that with Dynatrace, in your Dynatrace app, if you have a keyboard shortcut, you can also display it with a built-in solution. Uh, and that is also mentioned in the developer newsletter. We recently published another guide about keyboard shortcuts. It's called Plan Keyboard Shortcuts. And that would actually help you make your shortcuts look amazing in Dynatrace apps. So go check it out. You would definitely really enjoy it if you really have the keyboard shortcuts in your application.
Sounds pretty good. I'm also going to read it. I haven't had time since I was on vacation, but I have some reading to do. You have the link in chat in case you want to read it as well. So thank you for that, Inda. And then last but not least, Perform 2025 has been over the past week. It is over, but you can still experience all of the sessions and product announcements, as well as the breakout sessions on demand. You can check them out on the link that will be shared in the chat below. And you can see these are some of the main stage sessions that we have available on demand. You can see our CEO, Rick McConnell, and our CMO, Laura, talk about racing into a world of possibility, and all of the other main stage, as well as some other sessions. You can check it out on visiting link below, and you will see all of the new information, what is coming in Dynatrace in 2025. With that being said, you're always welcome to check out the developer Q&A forum, the developer docs, and the next office hours, which are not on January 7th, but no worries, we will fix that. They're in March, so they should be sometime in March. Usually we do it on Tuesday, so it should be Tuesday, maybe 11th of March, if I'm correct. I think it is. Yeah, it is the second week of March, 11th of March. Really, it always is 11th. So 11th of February, 11th of March, 2025. We'll see you again at the same time, 4:30 Central European Standard Time, or the Eastern time for all of our viewers in the West. With that being said, we're still open for any questions that you have, any additional comments. Inda, anything you might want to share?
Let's wait for the question. Meanwhile, I really want to personally just say hi, although it's already half an hour, to all those people who wrote us, and also everyone who joined, right? Hi, Jyoti from India, Vignesh, Nirakar, if I'm not wrong, Raj from London, Ananda from India, Nasheed from UAE. I think I covered almost everyone. And rest of the people who joined us today. Thank you for joining. And please do ask your question if you have some. And otherwise, we can wrap it up today.
Yeah, definitely. As always, you can always find us on the Q&A in the community. You can ask us questions. As said, please do include your code snippets. It's always helpful, and you will get a quicker answer if you provide those. Other than that, Inda, thank you very much for being here as an expert. Always great to have you, and see you next March 11th, hopefully.
See you
Thank
next
you
March.
all for watching and being with us. Wish you a great Tuesday, and see you next month.
See ya.